Everybody's been to airports. You know, everybody has been stuck in an airport. I don't know anybody who hasn't spent longer sitting in an airport lounge chair than on the airplane ride itself to their destination. Airports are small microcosms of society. There's places to eat, places to shop, places to go to the bathroom, places to meet people, places to get on the telephone.
Please watch it.
Now everybody has their own telephone, but I mean, airports are mini communities, and more often they're beyond the 3-mile limit of anybody's province. But this Krakosian gentleman, Victor Navorsky, finds himself without a passport and a visa once both are taken from him by the powers to be at the terminal, because his visa no longer counts since his country is no longer in existence, and his passport is no longer valid.
See, you don't qualify for asylum, refugee status, temporary protective status, humanitarian parole, or non-immigration work, travel, or diplomatic visas. You don't qualify for any of these things. You are, at this time, simply unacceptable.
And until they straighten out this sort of very kind of unique snafu, he's going to be stuck at the airport for a day, a week, a year, who knows? And that's his story.
I went.
Being at DreamWorks, a lot of scripts come to my attention, not just for me to direct, but certainly for me to, you know, consult on and collaborate with my partners in what movies we make here.
Right. Show the low angle of this.
Go to B camera, on Frank.
On Frank. And this was just one of the scripts that was part of my weekend reading package that I got to, I think, on a Sunday. I think I read like 3 scripts on a Saturday and 2 or 3 scripts on Sunday, and it was the last script I read.
I have an opening next Tuesday.
And I read it, and it made me forget the 5 scripts I read before it. I thought it was an amazing idea, very well treated, but the idea was the thing that really struck me.
I'm sure that Uncle Sam will have this all sorted out by tomorrow and welcomes the United States. Almost.
Thank you.
I called Walter Parks and I said, this is a great idea for a picture. And Walter says, you know, we're doing more work on the script. And I said, great, but don't let this too far out of your sight, because I think this is a really good movie for us and for people who want to be entertained and learn something about life. Life is waiting, as we say in our poster.
Well, in the course of researching the film, I lived at various different airports for several days, by which time I got to know a lot of the people. And it's funny how, having spent all that time there, sleeping actually on a bench on the 2nd level in the Tom Bradley terminal, for which I had to get permission in order to do that. But what I discovered was I met Mulroy, I met Enrique, I met Gupta, and I found that people were just incredibly kind. People in the airport who knew I was spending time there, they didn't quite know why, they just thought I was slightly insane, would come up and talk.
Airports are tricky places, Mr. Navorsky.
And they would sit down and have a cup of coffee. And so one of the most alien, unfriendly, horrible places in the world that one tries to get through as quickly as possible, suddenly, you know, over a few days, transformed into a little bit of the world that Victor sees. A place where people really do depend on each other, they rely on each other, there are real friendships, and there's a real sense of community. It's a tough place, but there's also some amazing things that go on.
Victor! Oh, I need your help.
One particular thing, when I first arrived at the terminal, I noticed a gentleman, an extremely well-dressed gentleman in a grey suit and a hat, sitting in the Bradley terminal just sketching. And I noticed him there on the 2nd day and there on the 3rd day. And then I asked one of the people at the airport who he was, and they said that he had been fired from his job 18 months ago and had not yet had the heart to tell his wife. So a lot of the things that appear in the film sort of first germinated from that research period, that week that I spent living there, meeting all the people.
I called Walter and I said, I want to direct it. This is something I'd love to do. I don't know why, but I have an affinity for Victor's story. In a way, I feel a little bit like Victor. I think all of us will feel and have felt in our lives a bit like Victor, a displaced person, a person in search of a life. And so I lobbied to direct it at that moment.
I was attracted to doing a story about immigration and about America. It just seemed like a time to investigate those two things and It's a very fascinating time, obviously, in our history. The issue of what is an immigrant at this point, how we treat the people that come here, why people still come here, what it means to be an American, and what it means to live in America are issues that, to me, are fascinating. And so when I got the script, I was really excited because it allows us to explore some issues that are, I think, paramount to everything that's going on in our country right now.
In developing it, we even threw around, is it a human comedy? Is it more of a drama? Is it a serious comedy? And truthfully, the very nature of this has to do with a man who gets caught in an airport and almost in microcosm comes face to face with the realities he would have found out in New York City. And so, yes, there are a lot of funny things that happen, but there's also some tragic things that happen, and there is a romance, and it does kind of reflect all of that. I do think there was one major shift that occurred during the filming, and it took place the day that Catherine showed up. Stephen, I know, always was describing this as a like story, not a love story, but a like story, but there was some kind of chemistry that took place between not just Tom and Catherine, but Stephen and Catherine, that just in some ways changed the tone of the movie a little bit.
I'm coming! No, wait.
I'm
Victor,
coming now!
Victor, just tell me more. Hey,
I'm coming! I'm coming!
In a real airport and in our set, which is as good as a real airport, it's all about people on their way to someplace. It's all about movement. And in our own lives, I think we're a lot about movement. We're about our jobs and rushing to get the kids to school, and it often leaves little time for reflection. And in some ways, I think Victor's stillness allows him to be a kind of mirror for these people, allows them to kind of examine their own lives. And I don't think Victor really changes as an essential person at all from the experience. He does fall in love, certainly, and he makes all of these connections, but I think it's more about how he changes the lives he intersects with.
The wonderful thing about the film is we see the world anew through Victor's eyes because he's seeing our world for the first time. Where he comes from, presumably, like a lot of smaller countries in Eastern Europe, particularly during the Cold War, but even to this day, there are things that we take for granted as being everyday things that are incredibly exotic. So I think there's a joy in seeing our world through Victor's eyes and really beginning to appreciate both how lucky we are and how much there is to this world that we just don't even pay attention to.
To have someone who's completely stuck, who can't move, is a really wonderful thing because it forces you to look at your own life and think, what would your life be like if you just couldn't move, if you were going to be in one space, if emotionally and socially you were trapped. And I think that's the fun of this film, and I think that's what separates this film from anything I've ever done or really anything I've ever seen.